Hey there, welcome to Oldman Runner. In today's video, I'm going to try and explain why I chose to enter the Zurich Marathon 2022. Zurich and 2022 are the most important things for why I entered it. Plus it's a marathon distance. Forget the stream of consciousness. I entered. Okay, now why I entered was after the Chicago Marathon, I started looking ahead to marathons I could enter. I chose Buckeye in Arizona, and then I entered the Berlin Marathon in 2022, the lottery. I wasn't expecting to win. As it happens, I did, so I could do that next. But anyway, in the meantime, I was looking to run a marathon in and around April, essentially spring break or Easter here, when I have a bit of time off from the university, and decided that I might like to look at running a marathon. In part, it was because I had wanted, or I do want, to make a run in Zurich. Zurich is a city I visited before lockdown 2 or 3 years ago, really enjoyed it, and wanted to go back to do a specific run and try and explain why. Now, behind me are a whole load of books. And I'm back. The books are all related to the Irish author James Joyce. He wrote the novel Ulysses, and he published it on his 40th birthday on February the 2nd, 1922. And it is written in Trieste, Zurich and Paris. James Joyce sheltered from both world wars, or what was called in Ireland, the Second World War was called the emergency, but he sheltered from them in Zurich. And unfortunately, he died in 1941 during the Second World War, and is buried in Zurich in the Flunturn Cemetery up above the city. And I had wanted to make a run up, as this is the 100th year anniversary of Ulysses being published. I had visited Zurich, which I loved immensely. I really enjoyed being there. And I wanted to try and film a run from the centre town up to the cemetery, which, believe me, I think is harder to do than a marathon, because it's quite steep if you just turn up and go. And I was trying to figure out this, trying to get fit to do this. And then I thought, well, look, I might be able to do it, and I still don't know if I can do it, but I might be able to do it if I run the tram line, because there's a tram line up. Trams don't go too steep. There are railways in Switzerland that are very steep, but the tram line should be doable. So I'm going to try and do that at the same time as doing a Zurich Marathon. I had picked the Zurich Marathon specifically because I wanted to go to Zurich to make this other run, and I thought, well, while I'm there, why not? James Joyce is critically important to my running. In 2014, when I got back into running, I decided to, I don't know how I come up with these decisions, but I decided that I would turn all of James Joyce's major works into half marathons. So that would be Ulysses, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Dubliners, and Finnegan's Wake. I think I did them in that order. They were written Dubliners, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Ulysses, and Finnegan's Wake, in that order. And the hardest one was to run Finnegan's Wake out in Dublin and over Howth Head. But after the arthroscopy on my right knee, I managed that. What happened was I started writing these blogs, and I do a website, which is, I'll put the link in the description, but it's jj21k.com, or a James Joyce half marathon. And in it, I was creating these half marathons, and then I started writing other pieces about James Joyce. Joyce is a complicated subject. I don't find it that complicated, but it's relatively complicated. And I decided that I would do these half marathons and I would write these blog posts. But I found that the more I knew about James Joyce, it's the gift that keeps on giving, the blog post got longer. I think the last one was 20-something thousand words. And they involved all sorts of subjects: crossing Dublin without passing a pub, crossing Dublin by going into every pub. Coronavirus restrictions have just been lifted in Ireland, so there could be a bit more of that. Anyway, I was interested in Joyce. One of the things that I'm particularly interested in Ulysses about, and so the blog is jj21k.com, discovered Dublin by reading and running. But as the blog posts got more intense and longer, I was spending less time running, and particularly when I spent a lot of time researching the pubs of Ulysses and putting on weight, that became way too complicated. And so essentially what happened was that I then decided I needed something else to get me out running. I can't easily just go and run. I find it very easy to go out and run 3 hours on a Sunday, let's say, because Stride tells me to, Whereas on Saturday I might think I only need to run 2K, and I'll go around the whole 2K. I'll be thinking, what am I doing? Where will I turn? What will I do? So I like a structured training program, and I set up doing the old man runner so that there was shorter goals that I might do, and that would get me and keep me running. And so far so thoroughly average. So far so good. So I've been doing that, and essentially I've been parked a little bit the James Joyce runs, and some of it was to try and learn how to film these half marathons of Ulysses. And I didn't want to just spend 2.5 hours or whatever it takes, or 2 hours with a GoPro off my hand. And I didn't think that would be interesting for the viewer. And so those of you who watch this channel regularly will see that I've been trying a few different techniques. In the video that comes out Thursday, I had a whopping good go at trying to film a place. Hope that turned out okay. So I'm going to try and do more of that. But anyway, essentially what happened was that I decided that I would do shorter runs for Old Man Runner and longer runs related to James Joyce as part of JJ21K. And I think I've got the technique now where I can make an interesting run from the James Joyce Centre in the centre of Zurich up to his cemetery. One of the things that interests me so much about Ulysses is that essentially it's about two men, a younger man, Stephen Dedalus, who's based on James Joyce, and an older man, Leopold Bloom, loosely based on James Joyce, and they intertwine across this beautiful city of Dublin, and various events start happening. The younger man is much more serious, probably too serious. The older man is much more relaxed, possibly too relaxed. His wife will be meeting, let's put it that way. Blaze is boiling at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's worried a bit about that. And so he wanders around the city, and these two men wander around the city. And I decided that when I did this half marathon of Ulysses, this is where it gets a bit tricky, and these blog posts will be short, but I'll blabber on and see what happens. You can always switch off. Anyway, in Ulysses, the two men walk around the city. And I wanted to develop this run that people would do. So I decided that I would create a half marathon, 21K, and then I would have 21 questions on this related to this marathon, and you would get a minute off your time for the easy question and 3 minutes off your time for the hard ones. There'd be 21 easy ones and 21 hard ones, in whichever one you could pick. Now, for those of you who want to know what the questions are, one would be, what is Bloom's central character in Ulysses? What is Bloom's first name? Which would be Leopold, and a lot of people would know that. And then I decided what would a difficult question be, what would be Bloom's middle name, which is, congratulations to anyone who knew that his middle name was Paula, but it is. Anyway, so I figured that the idea would be that somebody who won this mad race would be someone not the fastest, youngest runner on the track team, and not the oldest, slowest dude who just read a lot of Ulysses. Somewhere between those two. But actually somebody like me who read a bit and ran a little bit. So kind of encouraging people to get out a bit more, but stay in a bit more and read some of those. So that's what I tried to do. Along the way, I then decided, because I do, that's kind of the way my mind works, was that I had a half marathon time from when I ran the Windsor half marathon in the 1980s, late 1980s in the UK. And I had that time, and I figured at that time I could probably get 8 minutes off my time. I could probably answer about 8 easy questions about Ulysses. So I figured that. And then I knew that I had the time I ran Ulysses in 2014 as part of this. And I knew that I could answer all of the hard questions because I set them all. Always a trick. So I decided I could do that. And I put them into some complicated formula. And this was years after I decided this would be a good idea to do. And I discovered that my older self beat my younger self by a couple of minutes, which I was thrilled about. And essentially what I was trying to show in this whole mad escapade was that as you get older, you get slower. That's the bad news for all of us runners, unless you're very young and are getting faster. But most of us are getting a bit slower. But we have the chance to get more knowledgeable. Then what happened was that I then realized that not only as an older runner, you probably are getting slower, but that if you train and you do things properly, you might actually get quicker. Not as quick, but you might get quicker. So that's a potted history of what I like about James Joyce and what he means to me and means to my running, and give you an idea of why Zurich is so important for me to go to and to try and do this run, and also while at the same time do a marathon. So I might have to stay a couple of days to try and recover to do this run up to the cemetery. This week I ran out to, those of you who watch on Strava or follow me on Strava, I'm infrequent on Strava. I never quite get the hang of it. I don't know quite what the ethics of all this kudos stuff is, but I give it a go. But I ran out to Blackrock Park where James Joyce first started to run, and it was wonderful, 100 years on from Ulysses being published, to sort of go back to where James Joyce started running. So all of that was important. Again, I did that I ran with the Chorus, with the Apple Watch, using a Stride footpod on my foot and the Chorus, and comparing the two. I'll do a video breakdown of that. Essentially, I followed my Stride training plan. Again, I followed the training plan religiously, and it went great. First day was easy runs, followed by, I think, a time trial, and then followed by strides. I'll delve into it a little bit more detail, and I found it fine. The first day, the Sunday, I think this day last week, I had gone out just for a first easy session, and I got about a kilometre up the road, and then I was not happy with my knee and my shoe and all that sort of stuff. Again, simply there was nothing to tell me to run that fast and that distance. I mean, it comes across being incredibly stupid, but that's what I do. If it tells me to do this, I do it. So I'll review that in more detail. So see you next week. Thanks for watching.